Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in the current climate where we are expected to, where possible, work at home, or preferably not work at all if that's not possible, I'd like to go through what the government considers to be a key worker and someone who does still need to go to work. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've seen quite a lot of discussion over the past week about various people saying what is and is not a key worker. It is quite an important concept because there are some people, for example, who do not feel that they should be going to work for whatever reason, and employers say, no, you really need to. And, it's quite tricky. And with some of these people, it needs to be, the calculation is whether or not this person is a key worker from the point of view of the rest of us. And when I've seen people talking about this, quite a lot of people latch onto what is key for them personally. And they don't necessarily think about the wider picture. So obviously people will think about NH staff being key workers. And this won't include just doctors and nurses. Obviously it will include ancillary staff as well. They need admin and engineers and cleaners and things like that to keep the hospitals and clinics running. And then they may think, well, the supermarket staff, very important, because those people sort of know that if they come down with it or someone they care about comes down with it, they need hospital or clinics. So obviously they first of all think, yeah, well, of course, NH staff are key workers. Then they'll think, well, I need food. So, of course, supermarket staff are key workers as well. But there's an awful lot of other key workers I think some people are not forgetting about, or are forgetting about, sorry. And some of it, if you do a little thought experiment, you can sort of follow it through quite easily. I mean, let's take mechanics, garages. So they're open. I wasn't sure that they would be open, but that's not because I didn't know whether they'd be classed as key workers or not, but because I doubted the government's competence with regulations that were coming out very, very quickly to have thought it through. Mechanics are absolutely crucial because consider this. There are a lot of key workers, and I'm going to go through quite a lot of key workers. All these people need to get to work. There are certain rules now that are going to be completely different. So a few months ago, we'd have said, you know what, if it's possible for you to get to work with public transport, maybe you should do that, ease congestion, reduce our carbon footprint. Now the opposite is true. Do not go on public transport unless you have no other alternative. Go in your own tiny little metal box, or rather bigger metal box if you've got a Chelsea tractor, and on your own and get yourself to work. So all these vehicles now, there's been a bit of a waiver on MOTs, which is the annual test these things have to go through if they're more than 3 years old. For cars now, it was for lorries and now it's for cars as well. But what if it breaks down? You've got a key worker who can't get to work because not everyone even works in the same town they live these days. That's just not how the modern society functions these days. So what if you cannot get into work? You're a key worker. You need to get to work. So you need mechanics to deal with that. And also think about the delivery vans for supermarkets. They're in overdrive. You cannot get a slot booked. They go 3 weeks in advance. You can't get one. You have to just be there when they come online. Otherwise, you've no chance. And those vans need to be kept going. They don't have their own auto mechanics or anything like that working at Sainsbury's or Asda. In fact, the last time I went to a garage to get my brakes looked at on my car, there was a Sainsbury's delivery van there. Because do you know what? When there's an issue, they go to a mechanic. Just a normal garage. So those are absolutely key as well. And then when you think about, so what do garages need to keep going? Well, they need parts. So then the people who produce the parts and the people who transport the parts, transport's really key as well for the supermarkets. Yes, the supermarket staff are key workers because they're selling us the produce. People have to produce that produce and deliver it to the supermarkets as well. So there's a whole distribution network as well. And the same, if you do a little thought experiment, every time you think of what is clearly a key worker and then you think, what do they need and who is employed to meet those needs, all of a sudden there's lots and lots and lots. For me to be able to do this, for a start, there needs to be people going to power stations and keeping our electricity grid going. There needs to be people managing internet servers. So engineers and mechanics of all kinds are absolutely crucial as well. So what do the government say? Well, the government split it into different categories in terms of key workers. So health and social care, absolutely there. So that's not just NHS staff, social care as well, people who work in care homes or provide care out in the community as well, although that's much more difficult these days. But anyone associated with that, and it's not just frontline staff, that's also the admin, anyone else connected with that is a key worker. Education and childcare. So, and I'm actually quite pleased about this. I was talking about this, as someone from a teaching background. I was quite worried about the government's plans to have kids of key workers be able to still come to school. Not that I'm saying that shouldn't have happened, but there didn't seem to be any real thought into how feasible this would be. Fortunately, from what I gather, an awful lot of parents have been able to manage the situation. And at least one parent or someone has been able to look after the kids if they're too young to look after themselves. So certainly in the secondary school sector, most schools are just have got like 4 or 5 kids coming in, if that, and so they don't have staffing issues there. But education is still good, and I still teach part-time. I'm still delivering lessons remotely now, so that's considered key, but I don't have to physically go anywhere. Childcare, of course, again, still is needed if you're a key worker and you need that childcare. Key public services. I mean, that could, some of these are quite vague, but then you can imagine they have to be vague because you can't write an exhaustive list in the time they've got. Obviously, that's going to include an awful lot of things: police, fire services. And then it goes on to local and national government, because some of this is a bit of a crossover here. So recycling centres are still open. There's an awful lot of people, I've been talking about this recently, using their furlough time, the time that they're now at home, not able to work, to do things around the house. So, recycling centres need to be open. I think they'd have to be anyway, because I'm told by my girlfriend, I've not actually heard this from my council, but it's the same council, that they're not going to be collecting the brown bins. The brown bins are for garden waste. But we're just into the season now. We're going to start to be cutting the grass and stuff like that. So, I suppose, I don't know. People just either be burning that or just collecting garden. If they're going to have a good chop back of the garden, because it's not just grass with some people, it's other things as well. They'll be taking that to the recycling centre themselves as well, won't they? So, anything to do with key public services or local and national government as well. Food and necessary goods, so we've sort of covered that a little bit. Obviously, that's not just supermarkets. It's the producers as well. The people who also process food or transport food. Other necessary goods as well. We know that hardware stores are open. So where I go to the supermarket, there's like a retail park. And there's still cars in the car park at the retail park, because quite a lot of those shops are still open, because they provide, one of them's a pet store, so obviously you need to get your stuff for your pet. But there's various other ones that would sell what are considered necessary goods, not just food. So anyone who works in that side of retail, as well as the production and transport network, is also going to be considered key. Public safety and national security, so the country it still needs its police officers and intelligence officers and the like. Transport. So, although we've been looking at dismay in London, people packing into the tubes still, we're only really looking at that because we're quite sure that some of those workers should be just furloughed by their employers and left at home. But some of them will be key workers. I don't think it's been held there. I don't live in London, so I don't really know the ins and outs of this. When I say I don't really live in London, I don't actually live. I live 200 miles away, and I very rarely go to London. But what I gather is that services are being cut. Now, that might be a staffing issue. It may be they have to be cut rather than being used to dissuade people from using it. Because if it's the second one of those, then it's not working at all, because all it's doing is I gather, cramming more and more people onto fewer and fewer services. But obviously, for some people who do get to work via public transport, they need that, and they're a key worker, well, we do still need transport. And then utilities, communication and financial services. So utilities, I already talked to you a little bit about. We need our power, we need our internet. Imagine if we didn't have that. Gas as well, water we still need. And then all the people that, not just produce them, but do like water treatment, things like that. It only takes a little thought experiment. You can actually just go from like nurse, and you can fan out and fan out and fan out to lots and lots of different people who are absolutely needed to work. So although the roads are very, very empty now when you go and do your shopping, they are really empty. Which has actually created another problem. because you've actually got people driving very foolishly. I've not observed this myself, but I know others who have. And where I've observed the behaviour before is like, if you sometimes, when the supermarkets used to be open 24 hours, I would deliberately go in the early hours of the morning when I didn't have to get up the next day, just because it's quieter. I preferred it like that. And you would sometimes get people driving stupidly, going the wrong way round a roundabout, something like that. Because there's so few cars on the road, they just treat it as if there's no cars on the road, and they pretend that the Monaco Grand Prix or something. But some people are reporting the same sort of behaviour now in the daytime because there are so few cars on the road. But there are still vehicles on the road, because you know what? There are still key workers, and those people do need to get out and about as well. So hopefully that sort of gives you a bit of a thinking about what are key workers, that there are actually still an awful lot of key workers that are needed. And I don't mean key workers just to drive the economy, but actually just to keep us all going, to keep life ticking over. And it's easy just to focus on the NHS and supermarkets and give particular plaudits for them, but there's an awful lot of people who actually need to go out. And every time you're going out, of course, and you're going to potentially be with other people, you are risking becoming infected yourself. So these people, there's an awful lot of people, millions of people in the country who are doing this in order to keep our society going. So anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.